and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and I am back with the final installment of the May Bay series. I have talked about Armageddon, his third movie. I have talked about The Rock, which I did yesterday, and now, which was the second movie, and now I'm talking about his very first movie, Bad Boys. Again, I won't be going beat for beat for the movie because I'm going to assume, again, that most, if not all of you, have either seen this movie or have at least heard of this movie or seen clips of the movie. So consider this your spoiler warning for last time, again, a 20-plus-year-old movie. The basic story. Two Miami police detectives, Mike Lowry, played by Will Smith, and Marcus Burnett, played by Martin Lawrence, have to protect Julie, played by Téa Leoni, a witness who witnessed multiple murders done by Fort Che. I think that's how, if I remember, that's how this. I always forget how they say his name. I want to butcher his name, and I feel very bad about this because he is. I love him as an actor. I always love him seeing pop up when he did. Cheikh Karo, I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce it. Who just so happens to be selling a large amount of drugs that he stole straight from the police department's evidence locker before. Or at the beginning of the movie, rather. Mike and Marcus have to stop him before he sells it and leaves the country while also protecting their jobs. I like Armageddon. I love The Rock. Talked about that yesterday. I really, really like Bad Boys. There is a reason why I think this version of Michael Bay is the best Bay. I know people love the Transformers movies. I personally like the first one, really. I think that's the only really good one that I like of the ones that he's at least directed. Part 3 was filmed downtown here in Chicago, and yes, I did actually go downtown when they were filming and saw some stuff, which was pretty cool. But I think these first 3 Bay movies, Bad Boys, Armageddon, The Rock, were when he was at his best. Because obviously he was a young filmmaker. You know, he came from the music video world, so he had an eye, if anything, and I think I gave him that credit. I don't know if it was Armageddon or The Rock, that he has an eye for direction. You can see that, and especially, and even here, this is his first actual feature. You see that he has a certain eye for directing scenes, especially action scenes. So there's no surprise that he was able to get the jobs that he has gotten because of that. And with Bad Boys, again, being his first movie, this is obviously the most grounded of the movies that we have talked about because, again, it's his first movie and, you know, it led to him getting The Rock, which got a little bit more on the crazy side. And then he went full crazy with Armageddon. And then, of course, we saw all the Transformers movies. Again, going back to his eye for directing, everyone remembers the open shirt Will Smith running in slow-mo scene. Everyone remembers that. You say Bad Boys, you think of maybe certain quotes and stuff. You're like, give me an imagery. Maybe you think of the Miami, the plane flying over the Miami scene. But no, most of the time people will say it is the Will Smith running down the street in an unbuttoned shirt. It was either that one or it's the hero swooping shot of Smith and Lawrence getting up that has been repeated in every Bad Boys movie since then because it's a very cool shot. It's a very cool action movie shot, and he had that vision. And you can, yes, I will give him credit for the Transformers movies. I have seen all of them. They are shot great. There's a lot of great shots in there. The quality of those movies is the other question, but we're not talking about the Transformers movies. Back to this movie, back to Bad Boys. Obviously, the main reason why Bad Boys, in general, works so well is because of the amazing chemistry between Smith and Lawrence. These two bicker so well with each other. You can tell they care about one another because we all know. We all had that one friend, or we had a group of friends, or we still do to this day. We know that we can push their buttons. We know how far we can go with them. We know how much they can take because they're going to just throw it right back at us. That is who these guys are. And Smith and Lawrence make this movie work. Could have it worked. I'm an English major. Could it have worked with other people? Why was that so hard to say? Maybe. Ignore all that. But I do think it would have, but I don't think it would have had the same staying power that this movie has if it wasn't for Smith and Lawrence. Especially when you find out that Bay allowed them to improvise a lot of their lines since he wasn't the biggest fan of the script when he came in. So he did everything. They got more writers in there, but Bay just wasn't happy with stuff. So the day of filming, he was like, "You two just go ahead and improvise and do what you gotta do." That opening scene, the majority of it was improvised. So that's crazy to me that is the case. So let me do this, because I just mentioned it. An example of an alternate world of Bad Boys. Two of the names that were originally being looked at some point during the pre-production of this movie: Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes. Yes, Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes were originally being looked at some point. At one point, when Lawrence came in and Sony had bought the script from Disney, because Disney was going to do it, so it was probably going to go through their Touchstone Pictures, which we talked about with Armageddon, Arsenio Hall was offered the role with Martin Lawrence, and then he passed. And it's funny because Arsenio Hall has gone on to say that was one of the biggest regrets he had in his career, was deciding to pass on that. On top of that, Sony and Columbia, because that's where the movie is, had wanted to work with Will Smith, for a while, and they wanted to work with him on an action movie. So when this project came about, they were more than happy to attach him to it. So that was really cool. Another name that was looked at, Lawrence Fishburne, at some point. I don't know for what role, but he was attached. He was looked at one point. But the craziest bit, and I think I remember learning about this a few years ago, but as I was doing a little bit of research for this, I relearned it, and it just hit me so crazy. It just, again, alternate world where Bad Boys is not really Bad Boys. It would have been a completely different movie, because originally this was written with Dana Carvey and John Lovitz. Yes, you heard me correctly, even with the air conditioning in the background. Dana Carvey and John Lovitz. This was going to be based off, I guess, a skit they were doing in their SNL days, and they were going to make it a full-fledged movie. And the only reason, and this is even crazier, the only reason why this didn't happen is because Dana Carvey and John Lovitz went to Las Vegas with one of the producers of the movie, Don Simpson. Now, if you know anything about Don Simpson in the Hollywood world, I highly recommend, I cannot do it justice talking about Don Simpson. Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer, they were the team of doing movies together. And Don Simpson has a very interesting history in Hollywood with certain substance that ran rampant in the 90s, especially in Hollywood. So you could probably assume what I'm talking about there. But apparently this trip, Don Simpson, Dana Carvey, John Lovitz took, I think it was Dana Carvey, he was like, I can't do it. I'm out. And that's when that's when that alliteration, the original kind of version, if you will, of Bad Boys fell apart. I guarantee you it wasn't going to be an action movie. I think it was called something else. I didn't write that down in my notes, but yeah, that's crazy to think that was going to be what we were going to get. So thankfully, that's not the version we got. I mean, it probably would have been interesting to see that version, but it obviously wouldn't be the Bad Boys that we know. It could be a completely different movie. But we got this version. So the action sequences, the quotable lines, which I still use to this day, imagery of the movie, I talked about some of those imageries already, make Bad Boys very worthwhile and make it hold up. There are things, obviously, that date the movie, but for the most part, Bad Boys is a movie that holds up very, very well. I know everyone will remember Smith and Lawrence for this movie, but I do want to, talk about the supporting cast a little bit. I already mentioned Cairo earlier as Touche the villain. He's pretty great here. He's menacing enough that you believe he's got all these guys scared. There's one character called Jojo the Tire Guy, where he's afraid of saying his name. A great scene when Mike finally gets the name out of him. I will always remember Cairo as three things: the villain in this movie, the villain Kiss of the Dragon, because he played the bad guy in that as well, and then in The Core, where he's playing a good guy. Here, though, he's a real bastard. He really is. He's a real, he's the bad guy for a reason. Joe Pantoliano, obviously, as Captain Howard, the MVP of the supporting cast, and not just this movie, I think even part 2 as well. He's got the hot-tempered, captain thing going down. He's always yelling at Mike and Marcus, but he knows they can get the job done. Despite all the damage that they do, despite having his job on the line in this movie and potentially taken away from him, the case taken away from him by the internal affairs officer in the movie, played by a woman. I forgot to write down who it was, but originally supposed to be a man, but changed to a woman. He's like, you two can get it done. Even though you drive me crazy, I have to, woosah. That's part 2. That's not really part 1. I have faith in you that you can get this done. So that's really great. You have Nestor Serrano and Julio Oscar Mancuso playing Sanchez and Ruiz, who are 2 fellow detectives in the police department, and they kind of have like this kind of buddy rivalry with Mike and Marcus. They're always kind of bickering at each other, giving each other one-liners and zingers, and it kind of just even though those are kind of the only 2 real other cops, I guess, that they interact with, besides Captain Howard, it makes the station feel real. Even just if it's just 2 characters, I think just kind of makes that realistic a little bit. Let's finally talk about Taleone, who plays Julie in the movie. A childhood crush, if there ever was one. I don't know what it was. Maybe just her voice. Obviously, the fact that Taleone is a very beautiful woman. Watched it the other day. Still, the scene in the bed when she's trying to, when she already knows that Marcus is not Mike. Even though it's, obviously Marcus is putting on the act that he's Mike. She's smart, obviously. Julie's a very smart person. She's a very smart character. And she knows it's not, Marcus isn't Mike. So that scene when she's trying to seduce him in the bed, still, I would have folded. I'm just saying. She's a smart character. She knows when to leave town. She's planning on leaving town when she realizes that Touche's guys are probably after her and they probably got her license plates. She knows to call Mike and only Mike. She doesn't trust any other cop because when Max is obviously Mike's friend and the character that ends up getting killed, that kind of jumpstarts everything. She tells him the only cop you can really trust if anything goes down is Mike Lowry. And when she calls Mike and obviously is only willing to trust him, and Marcus has to put on his best Mike Lowry impression and everything, it makes it more believable. She's like, even if she doesn't believe it the whole time, she has that safety net in Marcus. And Marcus, obviously, he's a bit of a doof, but you can tell he's a good cop and he's a good man, and she probably kind of sensed that a little bit. I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of a bummer that we don't see her coming back. I mean, there's no reason really to bring her character back at all, but if they did bring her back, it would just be nostalgia sake. And even for nostalgia's sake, I think it would just be like a nice little like one scene, like, hey guys, it's me again, kind of thing. I talked about the score of the last 2 movies. I might as well talk about the score for Bad Boys, because the score for Bad Boys is also very, very good. And also a very memorable one that I instantly recognize. Mark Mancina did the score for this one. And before this, the year before, he did the score for Speed, which is another great score, and kind of full circle, because he did that score with the Armageddon composer, Trevor Rabin. He did a score for Con Air with Trevor Rabin. So nonetheless, like I mentioned at the with Armageddon, I think I even mentioned it with The Rock, and I'll mention it here. 90s action scores were awesome, and these guys alone, Marcus Mancina, Trevor Rabin, Hans Zimmer, they were giving us some bangers for 90s scores, and Bad Boys is no different. All in all, I really like and still like, and I think even when I was rewatching this movie again, and even now talking about it, borderline love Bad Boys. I really do. I don't know if I'm ready to say this is the best of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, but seeing them together has always been a plus and worthwhile, and they gave us, again, very quotable lines. Bitches in the Sea, which was improvised over an argument. Apparently there was a couple arguments on set. This was one of them. Mike Lowry, King Dingaling. I don't know why I think about that every now and then. The whole gas station scene with, the owner thinking that Mike and Marcus are trying to rob him, so he holds him up at gunpoint. That whole scene's great. My shit always works sometimes, which is something I say to myself a little bit too many times when I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, and I do it anyway. Being a substitute teacher, this also runs through my head every now and then. This comes from Captain Howard mainly. Or not mainly, this is actually a line he says, and I think this is in the basketball court. Did you hear what I said? I heard what I said because I was standing there when I said it. That scene always runs through my head. That line always runs through my head because sometimes kids are just, like they know they shouldn't be doing stuff when they should. And of course, you forgot your boarding pass, which I always say to myself when I'm getting on a plane all the time. And there, of course, there's so much more. I love this movie. I was trying to play it cool, like, no, I don't really like Bad Boys. Or yeah, Bad Boys is good. Yeah, it's not as, whatever. No, I love Bad Boys. I love these three first movies. I really do. I love The Rock. I think The Rock might be my favorite, but I think Bad Boys is like it's really right there. And then of course I really like Armageddon as well. I won't be getting into Bad Boys 2 or even Bad Boys for Life, especially Bad Boys for Life, since Bay didn't direct that one. But I did enjoy those movies. I would even dare say that I enjoyed For Life a little bit more. Bad Boys for Life, obviously, more than Bad Boys 2. I haven't seen Bad Boys 2 in its entirety in a little bit, so I probably have to go back and watch that. What I don't like about Bad Boys for Life is they try to redo Mike's backstory, which is such a big thing, especially in here in this one, which I don't like. And that kind of makes who his character is in the first movie and even a little bit in the second movie. So I don't like that they did that, but that's just me. But for the first movie, it still works. It's still good. It's worth your time if you haven't somehow seen it. What are you doing? Go watch it. Go watch that. Go watch. If the Transformers movies has scared you away from Michael Bay, I guarantee you that his first three movies are worthwhile. This, Armageddon, The Rock, so good. And they're 90s movies. They're 90s action movies, so you're getting something good out of that. I just want to throw a couple tidbits your way for this movie. Just two, actually. Just two. The line at the very end when Mike, Will Smith, says, "I love you," to Marcus, was something that Smith and Bay thought about. It's a line. 3 words. I love you. And I guess the argument lasted for over an hour on set. Everybody was on the tarmac. Everybody was just waiting on Will Smith to say that line. And they were arguing with each other at multiple points during the argument. Martin Lawrence and Tay Leone, who are in the scene because they're handcuffed to each other, come in, or they're going to get handcuffed to each other, come in throughout the argument to try to, get him to say the line. And as they were shooting the scene, which was the last chance to shoot the scene because they were shooting against the sun, Will Smith finally says the lines, "I love you." And then he says, "Yeah, I said that shit." It wasn't directed, that part wasn't directed to Martin Lawrence as Marcus. That was directed to Michael Bay, who was just off camera, which I think is always cool. And every time I watch that scene again, I always think that's really funny. Because he's not looking at Marcus, he's kind of looking off the distance. You can tell just by the look on his face. He's like, "Yeah, I said that shit." Like, you could tell, like, that wasn't acting. That was really him saying that. And as for Michael Bay himself, obviously this is his first movie. He still sacrificed some of his pay so the movie could have a budget to keep and shoot key action sequences, especially since a lot of them only had a day to shoot them, which is mind-boggling to me. And this movie was also shot on the cheap, which is probably why they only had a day to shoot those action sequences. But you watch this movie and you're like, they shot all that in a day? That is absolutely crazy to me. And I think that's what makes me appreciate this movie a little bit more than I would have in general. I already enjoy this movie as much as it is, but knowing that, I think is just puts it over the top for me. And that's it, everybody. That is it for May Bay. I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun going back and watching early Michael Bay because, like I mentioned, those first 3 movies that he did are really, really good. That question on Film Twitter always pops up: who has a solid first 3 movies straight back to back to back? And I don't see anybody mention Michael Bay because a lot of people don't like Armageddon. A lot of people don't like The Rock because they're so over the top and ridiculous. But in terms of enjoyment factor, Bad Boys, The Rock, and Armageddon, I think that puts Bay in that conversation. I'm just saying. And I'm not just saying that because I love The Rock and I love Bad Boys and I really like Armageddon. I'm just, as an enjoyment factor, if that's what you're basing it off of, or if that's what you want to base it off of, I think Michael Bay should be on that list. I'm just saying. And I'm not even the biggest Michael Bay fan anymore because Transformers really dissuaded me from Michael Bay. I like his recent stuff. Despite all the politics behind 13 Hours, I thought the movie was pretty good. I liked it as just like a action movie. I thought it was great. Ambulance, I think was even though he gets a little crazy. All the drone shot scenes are pretty gnarly, but it's Michael Bay. Knowing that it's Michael Bay, it's like, okay, I get that, I understand that. I wouldn't say that it's him. At this point, at this stage with that, but it's probably the closest we'll get to original Michael Bay in terms of quality or in terms of filmmaking style and stuff like that. So I don't know. There you go. That's May Bay, Bad Boys, The Rock, Armageddon. What do you think, listeners? Did you like this series? Did you what do you think of his early three? If you have seen those three movies, if you maybe rewatch these movies after the fact, let me know what you thought. Is this something you want me to keep doing? Not necessarily with Michael Bay, because I'm not talking about Pearl Harbor and I'm not rewatching all those Transformers movies, but with other directors. Maybe you want to jump on this. Maybe you want to do a little rewatch series of some directors. Jump on the podcast here with me and talk about them. I'm totally open to that. But if you want to, want me to, sit through and that sit through makes it sound like a punishment. If you want to watch certain, certain movies by a director, want me to do a little series on those, let me know. Let me know on the social medias. I'm always open for it. I'm always open to ideas for this podcast. Anything that makes me watch more movies and makes me do more podcasts, I'm all about for it. So thank you guys so much for listening to the series. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I will be back to regularly scheduled podcasting schedule, hopefully in June. Actually, no, not hopefully. I will be, because I will be out of school for substitute teaching. So yeah, we'll be doing that. The April movie roundup will be coming out in June. I can't help it. I'm sorry, guys. April and May, because I got to do May now as well. But yeah, those are coming out soon, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Let me know what you guys thought of the series. Let me know what you guys thought of these podcasts. I know I hit you guys up with 3 podcasts in a row. That's very unlike me, but I wanted to get this series out. And I thought about doing it week to week, but just, work got in the way and everything. But I kind of liked it. I did this. I did them 3 in a row. I thought that was really cool. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. I very much appreciate it. Make sure to check out all the links down below in the description/show notes area. I will see you guys next time. And remember, go watch some movies.